if we can flip that switch, if we can recognize that scarcity mindset, that feeling of lack, that we lack the things we need to be happy, whole, and complete, and we recognize that it is an endless, futile chase to fill up that hole in our hearts with experience and prestige, we will end up just finding that nothing seems to work, and we only end up getting further from the truth and our true self, and which is that we are complete, that we are whole, and that this is an infinite universe. That means that everything we could ever want is available to us. The problem is when our wants get confused with our needs and we suddenly put too much importance on the things that aren't really important, that don't really matter, and that aren't really contributing to our well-being. I think every New Yorker knows that impatient, hurried, rushed mindset that we get from living in the city that never sleeps. New Yorkers walk a little faster, they talk a little faster. It was funny for me when I went down to Savannah, Georgia, where I went to college, to talk at my university after graduating, and after living in New York for a few years and then coming back to the small town in the South, it was like people couldn't even understand what I was saying. They were like, slow down. When we live in a energetic, fast-paced place, it's very normal and natural for that to affect us. We're not in nature where everything is slow and the trees are just blowing in the wind a little. For me, it was when I was walking with a coworker. I already was a fast-walking New Yorker, and she was like 2 blocks ahead of me. She was walking like 10 times faster than I was, and I was like, hey, do you ever just like slow down and smell the roses? And she was like, why? What for? What are roses? And a lot of people, I think, especially people who grew up in New York, have that kind of mentality of why slow down when there's so much to do? But when that feeling gets overwhelming, when we find that that constant chasing is exhausting and that what we catch at the end of that chasing isn't bringing us lasting satisfaction that we're hoping for, then we tend to look for those ways to slow down and ways to enjoy our lives instead of race through it. Meditation is the greatest activity for this problem, because when we are doing too much, the act of doing nothing is the greatest act in the world. And it is so important when we are overscheduling ourselves and our family to create that empty time, that free time. Simply practicing being present while we do tasks or observing our thoughts while we're thinking, all of this helps us to bring some kind of balance and peace into our lives so that we don't lose ourselves in the doing, we don't lose ourselves in our thoughts, and our higher wisdom stays present throughout. Because at the end of our lives, we may have caught everything we were hoping for. We may have gotten lots of houses and boats. But if we haven't learned how to enjoy, then we don't appreciate those things. We have to stop accumulating all those negative experiences in our lives along with all of the possessions we buy. And we need to always be aware of what's going on within us, to be able to recognize those ways we've been conditioned, those ways we've been traumatized, and so that we can instead of reliving those old patterns, we can start that process of healing instead of always running away from what is just under the surface. And that is where slowing down, some stillness, really creates the space for that true stuff that's going on with us that we may try to avoid, that so many of us unconsciously, subconsciously, and sometimes consciously will try to avoid a negative feeling. We'll try to avoid negative thoughts. But the more we resist, the more they fester under the surface. We really need to shine that light of consciousness on those darkest corners of our mind in order to disinfect, to transform that pain into the light and into something positive, which is within all of our capability. Just like a car will break down if we run it 24/7 at full speed. If we treat ourselves, our bodies, our lives like it's a race to a finish line, we will surely get to the end. But we may realize that it wasn't actually a race, that it was a journey. There's nothing wrong with enjoying all of the things that make life fun and interesting and exciting. When we chase those pleasures maniacally, when we can't enjoy a concert because we're thinking about an after party, or we're thinking about posting it online, when we can never be present, when we're always running away from ourselves in this never endless chase for infinite pleasure and material accumulation, we'll never appreciate any of those things. We'll never actually find satisfaction and contentment, because all of those things are temporary. There's not one thing externally that brings us lasting joy, because if it did, we would never stop, because lasting joy is something that has to be earned. If we find it in pleasure, or we mistakenly think it's in pleasurable activities, we will quickly notice that whether it's food or drugs, doing too much quickly makes us sick, and doing way too much will kill us. And these are not that health and happiness that we're looking for. And so in order to find that true source, we need to recognize first that this endless chase and endless pursuit is making us crazy, making us unhappy, making us impatient, unfocused, ill-tempered, and disconnecting us from ourselves and the people that matter most in our lives. It's no wonder people are exhausted and suffering with mental illness, because for most of human history, we didn't have to think of anything. If we were hungry, we'd go find some food. If we were thirsty, we'd go find some water. And everything was as simple as what am I needing right now? It is really a necessary and essential requirement for a healthy mind is to give it space to breathe, to process the constant bombardment of information. It is the only way to stay sane, to not get overwhelmed, overloaded with information. When I first moved to New York City from Louisville, Kentucky, I don't know how I came to this insight, but something inside of me recognized that this town is fast-paced. It is chaotic. It is got one speed, which is go, go, go. And I sensed that I really need to go to Central Park every day and just spend an hour there, or I might lose my mind. And so that's what I did. And it really brought me so much sanity and well-being. That little time to remind myself that not everything is in a hurry. Not everything is rushed. That mindset of being 10 minutes late to everything, you're barely able to catch up, is just a mindset. And that an hour in the park, not rushing through it, because you can't rush through sitting for an hour. There's no way to sit for an hour quicker than an hour. And it doesn't matter if it's meditation or any activity where we set aside an hour and we're just going to take our time. There's no rush. There's nothing to think about. There's nowhere else to send our mind wandering. That hour of non-rushing can help bring some peace and balance to a mind that is used to rushing the other 16 hours of our waking life. And so bringing in these moments where we deliberately don't rush. 10 minutes meditation, 15-minute walk, and we just create some inertia in the opposite direction of constantly going. Now, I didn't always get to the park. And when I missed a day, I felt it. And when I missed a few days, I really felt it. And after a few months of living in New York and thinking, I don't need to go to the park anymore, I'm a New Yorker now. That's when the back pain started and the other addictions and workaholism and all sorts of the fun stuff that happens when we try to run away from the underlying emotions that are going on within us. So a little bit of slowing down can really create the space in our day that creates a feeling of space in our life. We live in a strange time where we all are told that we basically have to carry in our pockets things that are more addictive than cigarettes. So we have to have a thing in our pockets that we're told, now don't get addicted, now don't get too crazy, but keep this on you at all times. Well, it's no wonder we are going crazy with these devices. We're not designed to be able to have all of the world's information at our fingertips. And it can really make us very scatterbrained, because our brains already jump from thought to thought and topic to topic like wild monkeys. Now they can swing through the internet and go anywhere across the World Wide Web, swinging from any kind of news story to whatever curiosity pops into a person's mind. And we can get into this situation where, between everything in our lives, all the stuff we have to do, all the stuff we're curious about, we're juggling a million lists in our brains all at once. And it can create a situation where we're unable to focus. We're unable to sit still and do one thing. And we're always thinking about, what was I supposed to do? That's like our mantra now. What was I just gonna do? What was I just about to look up? I think we all can relate to on some level to that. And the best thing we can really do when it's really bad is to take a fast, to go into a forest where there's no opportunity to look anything up. And if we can't do that, maybe we delete some apps. Maybe we just leave our phone in the other room. So many things we can do to make it a little more difficult, to create a little bit of a barrier before mindlessly distracting ourselves from what we need to focus on. And while those activity tracking apps that tell us how much we're wasting time are great, we want to be mindful of if they are killing our mindfulness, because this is a skill that we need to learn. We need to use that mindfulness that we're developing in meditation and apply it to every second of our day, and make sure we are mindful of our time and that we're not outsourcing our mindfulness. So keeping a check on ourselves throughout the day so that we don't suddenly realize we've lost 2 hours or the whole day. The more we just keep making mindfulness a practice, the more we keep checking in with our highest intention and our goals and reflecting on whether what we're doing now will help us to reach that desired future or not. One day may be 1/1000th of our life, whereas when we're 30 years old, it can be 1/100,000th of our life. So a day seems like a big event, and a month can be a huge part of a little person's life. As we get older, time naturally tends to feel as if it speeds up as we have a greater perspective of time. But the key is not to try to hold on to time. The key is to be present for the way it is, to recognize this eternal stream of time, this eternal stream of conscious awareness simultaneously occurring with this stream of eternal present moment. When we ride that wave, that present moment, when we are simultaneously letting go of the past moment and welcoming the new one, and we're not thinking about the next moment, we're not thinking about a past moment, but we are truly just awareness, we discover that there really is no movement of time. There is a stillness. When we can be still with that stillness, that is how we discover that really deep peace that is possible, that is underneath every tiny bit of chaos is that peace, the undisturbed. Sometimes I am genuinely amazed by how much people overcomplicate their lives. Whether it's minimalism applied to our stuff, minimalism applied to our time, or minimalism applied to the things we put in our brain, the content we consume, the things we take interest in. There are so many things we do that don't really make us happy, take up a lot of our time, and even, we could say, make our lives worse. So I would encourage everybody to really look at everything we're doing, and we could even prioritize, what is the most important things in our lives, and then we can chop off the bottom half of that list most of the time. Most of the time, the stuff that takes up the most time is the least important. Oftentimes, it's a lot of the phone stuff. But whatever it is, we can do so many things to create space in our lives, create free moments. So often we take our phones in the bathroom, we take, our phones out of our pocket at a restaurant if someone else is in the bathroom. These are all moments where we can create meditations, space in our lives, time to reflect, mentally digest what's been happening, and to just increase our well-being, to increase our happiness, to heal from any stress or difficult situations. And we can be vigilant about it. We can be very protective about when our no distraction time is, when our park time is, when we're unavailable from our phones. The more we really look, I think we'll find that the things we think are so important can be done slower, can be enjoyed while we do it. And when we can find the joy in the little things, life becomes joyful, because most of life is those little things. And so giving ourselves the time to take our time is essential, because life is not a race. It is not a finish line we're trying to get to. It is the time to enjoy, to appreciate, to be present for. That's what matters in life.